All right. So what we're going to talk about tonight, if you'll see on the slide behind me, go back one more slide, Joe. So I got to have you, Joe. We want to talk about what is our strategy for spiritual formation here in the church. Like, how are we really trying to set about shaping people in what we believe is the unique version of what a Christian disciple looks like, at least as it fits the values and priorities of our church as we see it. So if you're here and you're new to our church, you're going to learn a lot about who we are and what we're trying to aim for, and that's good. But you also hopefully will learn a lot about just the Christian life and what it's meant to be for all of us. But there is something unique inside of that Redeemer is trying to do and trying to be, and I want to share a little bit about that with you tonight, okay? So I'm going to do it by starting with this question. So why are we here? In other words, what is the mission statement of our church? And here's where this has changed over the years because I've learned a little bit more about what makes for a good mission statement and what doesn't. The Great Commission probably shouldn't be a church's mission statement because every church should be doing the Great Commission, right? I mean, or love God and love neighbor. That's something that every church should do. So when you come up with a mission statement, what you're trying to do is to say, this is trying to capture something that is unique inside of what every church should be doing. This is kind of the unique thing that God, we believe, has us here to do. And we would describe it to you this way. We believe that we are here. This is our mission, our mandate, our guiding North Star. This is the heartbeat of our church, okay? And it is to send leaders for a gospel movement in the city and beyond. We believe that our church is uniquely positioned and has been uniquely gifted by God toward being a church that sends leaders for a gospel movement in the city and beyond. Now, I didn't warn you about this, but we're going to try to talk back and forth. This is not just me talking for the next 45 minutes. What strikes you about that? Anybody want to say anything? What just immediately jumps out to you about that statement? And I'll try to repeat it for the sake of those that might be watching from home. Anybody? Anything? Where do you get your leaders from? Yeah, if you're going to send leaders, you have to be making leaders, right? That makes sense? There's some dying, okay? Dying in the actual either going or sending. Yep, and parents are experiencing some of that this week as they send kids to college, some of them. Yeah, Brad? What is a gospel movement? Great. I'm not going to answer that tonight. We've answered that in other places. That we actually have, there's a whole series of sermons that we preach that's on our website. If you've been through the membership class, we talk about that a great deal, about what we mean by gospel movement in the city. A gospel movement is a movement of the gospel. That doesn't clarify at all. Anything else stand out to anybody? It's local, yes. But we did say in the parentheses and beyond, right? So it is focused on the city, but it is going beyond the city as well. Okay, great. So if that is the mandate, if that's what we're here to do, how are we going to do it? Next slide. There's a lot of information over on the right. I'm not going to go through all of that. I want you to focus on the visual, which I thought was really great. And then Matt Pettigrew said this week it's very 90s, which made me feel very self-conscious about it. He said, no, I mean that in the best way. It's in the best way. So I thought, yeah, that probably tracks. Okay, so there we go. But then he said, but I grew up in the 90s, so I like that. So, whatever. But so if you see that that visual there, it is meant to be a picture that describes kind of our hope for every person that's a part of our church. What is weird about it is that you really start at the bottom right where you see the box show up. So kind of what we're hoping the progression of people as they experience our churches is that in showing up, they would show up and then connect and then grow and then go out. So there's a sense in which you come, you start to be a part of things, you connect relationally in the church. As a result of that, we're trying a pathway of growth for the sake of being sent back out into the places that God has called you to. If you think about our worship services, in many ways, that's what happens every Sunday. We show up, right? God calls us to worship. We come, we gather ourselves there. Then the first part of the service is really about connecting. You have the law passage, the prayer of confession and repentance, and then the assurance of pardon, and then we greet one another. All of that is about connecting. It's about connecting to God, connecting to one another, and then there's the teaching time, which is the growth piece, and then we're sent, because this really is the rhythm of the Christian life. You show up, you connect, you grow, and you go out. And so we need a strategy for each of those. And so if you see the little, I don't know what to call it, but do you see the little, is it like a backward swoosh? A hook? Yeah. Here's what that's meant to illustrate. And I've used this illustration a couple with the elders last weekend, and then with our staff on Monday, but now with you. So forgive me if this is the third time you've heard this in the last 5 days. But if you've seen the movie The Martian, you know the movie I'm talking about? There's a movie, The Martian. They leave Matt Damon on Mars. They don't know it. There's a group of astronauts. They go to Mars, and there's a storm that comes, and they have to clear out before the storm ruins their equipment, and they get stranded on Mars. And in the process, he gets hit by a satellite dish or something, and they think he's dead, and so they leave. And then they're about halfway home between, if Mars is here and Earth is here, they're about halfway home when they realize that he's alive. And so they think, okay, well, what are we going to do? We got to go back and get him. What are we going to do? And so they start to make plans to decelerate the spaceship they're in and turn around and go back to Mars. But what they realize is that if they do this instead, if they actually, even though they're about halfway in between, instead of just going halfway back, if they actually accelerate, what they can do is they accelerate, and then the gravity of Earth, they get sucked into the gravity of Earth, which actually increases their velocity and then slings them back out towards Mars. So actually, even though Mars is here, Earth is here, and they're here, they can actually go toward Earth and get slingshot back to Mars quicker than they can slow down and turn around and go back the other way. Because of the gravitational pull and the way the pull of the Earth can accelerate their velocity. So that's really what we're trying to illustrate there, is what we're trying to do with people, whether it's non-Christian people who are coming to faith in Jesus, or people who've been in the church for a long time but have lost sight of the grace of Jesus, or whatever it might be, or have not been a part of a church that really is focused on something other than what's happening just in the church. We're trying to pull people into the gravitational pull of our church, right? Pull them into the orbit, pull them into kind of the critical mass of everything that we're trying to be, and who we are and what we believe and how we're doing the Christian life, for the sake of being able to accelerate and propel them back out into the places that God has called them to. Does that make sense? And so maybe that's your experience. Every time I try to get out, they pull me back in, right? We're trying to pull you in, but we gotta. What are we pulling you into? And that kind of is the question. What are we pulling you into? What is the gravity? What is the weight and the mass? The critical mass of what we're doing. And so that really is what we're after. Okay. And so this is our process. Now, how do we know when we're successful? I think there's another slide for this, Joe. And really, if you think about the measures and the marks, this is the standard by which we measure our effectiveness in people's lives, okay? This is the portrait of a redeemer person, okay? Because the church is in the people business, so we don't measure success by how big the church is or how many ministries we can start or support. It's you. It's what God's doing in your life that is the measure of the success of the church. And so we would say what we hope for every single person who comes to Redeemer. In other words, as you get pulled in, before, not in the process of also being sent back out to the places God has called you, what we're hoping that we can figure out a way to help you develop are these 4 things, okay? The first is gospel fluency. And what we mean by that is the ability to understand and to speak the gospel to yourself and to others, okay? But what do you think is the significance of the word fluency there? Why gospel fluency? You're comfortable doing it. Accuracy, good. Anybody else? Okay, yeah, right. Fluency allows you to that's a great, yeah. So if you're fluent, there's spontaneity. They say you're fluent when you start to, if you're trying to learn Spanish, you've become fluent when you're dreaming in Spanish. Yeah, right? So it's that sense of, you can go to PSC across the lake and take a Spanish class, but if you really want to learn Spanish, the best thing you can do is immerse yourself in a language, in a culture that speaks it, so that there's just this immersive experience to where, everything you do is immersed in the reality of that. So the gospel works the same way. You can take a seminary class, or you can go to a Bible study about the gospel and learn it, but that's different than being immersed in a culture where the gospel is spoken about in a certain way, and where the instincts of the people in that culture are shaped in a certain way, so that your instincts begin to be shaped in the same way. Does that make sense? Okay? So gospel fluency, relational health. And by that we mean people who like, well, the way I say it is becoming the gospel to others through dying love. In other words, the measure of relational health is your ability to not make it about you, but to display the love of Jesus, who, though he was God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing and taking on the very nature of a servant. And Paul says, have that mind among you. I mean, that's what we mean by relational health, is in marriage, in parenting, in friendships, in all of those places in your life, to be able to not make it about you, but to be the person who dies for the sake of others. Does that make sense? Any thoughts about that? Yeah? Did you say amen? Amen. Okay. Spiritual practice, and we mean there developing mind, body, soul habits for spiritual growth. Anything strike you there? It's ongoing, good, yeah. Habits are automatic. They don't start out automatic, do they? Yeah, they start out as something that is very hard, typically. But that's the whole goal, is to automate them in your life as much as you can. Anything else stand out? Yeah. Jeanette. Great. Are you, yeah. That's a great question. And we believe that it is, because we are body, soul, we are mind, body, soul creatures, which means that, without going all the way down the rabbit trail of that, if there are spiritual struggles in your life, it may be that there is a real sin problem. It may be that you are the mom of a preschooler who hasn't slept in 5 years. You know what I mean? I mean, like sleep and physical realities affect us and intertwine in the ways, in spiritual things in our life as well. And so health in spiritual practice is not only spiritual things, it also is things that account for the body and the soul as well, and the mind. We believe that. And there's a lot, and we could talk more about that, but that's not the main thing I want to talk about tonight. So, and then lastly, missional living, and just we mean by that loving the city and especially our non-Christian neighbors. And so, a healthy person, a redeemer person, is a person who understands that wherever they are, they've been sent by God and there's a mission. Okay, and so those four things are pretty good. Like, can you imagine a church full of people who were characterized by those things? And that is our portrait. That is what we hope. If you've been a part of our church for a while, we hope that you could look at your life and you say, wow, all of these things, I'm a work in progress, right? All of us are. But man, I can really see ways that I'm learning and growing in all these different areas of my life. That's what our hope is, okay? But you got to name it before you can create a way to actually make it happen, which is why we've done that, okay? But now, this is what is new, though, about all of this, okay? Is that in our initial church planting plan, we identified 5 ministry strategies. Joe, what's the next slide? Just show it to me. Okay, go back. I don't want to get there yet, but I couldn't remember what was next. We identified 5 ministry strategies at the time. We said worship, so Sunday mornings, community groups. Then we tried to have pathways for mission with nonprofits in the city that we wanted everybody to be a part of, life-on-life discipleship, and church planting. And so at the time, what we were doing is we were saying, if you're going to be a part of our church, we hope we want you to come to the worship service on Sundays. That's really important. But then there's this thing called community groups, and we want everybody to be a part of a community group. And then if you're super spiritual, then we'd like for you to add one other piece, and that is that you could go to church on Sundays and be a part of a community group, and we want you to be in a discipleship group, because community groups and discipleship groups serve different purposes. The goal of a community group was, what does it say? Community, connecting. It was about relationships. The goal of a discipleship group was discipleship. It was about learning, okay? And so we knew that both of these things needed to happen. And so we expected all committed members to our church and regular attenders to be involved in both. That was kind of our strategy. And it really was not a great strategy, I don't think. The weakness of it was its idealism, because most people were not able to commit the time to belong to both kinds of groups. And so recently, in the last 3 to 5 years, maybe even more recent than that, we kind of changed that strategy and said, what we'd really like for you to do is to prioritize Sunday morning, because it's what God says to do, right? And then the second thing we'd like for you to do is to find a group, just to find a group, and to invest in that group and connect relationally with other people. And so think about the pathway. Show up, and what's the next step after you show up? Connect. And then in connecting, what starts to happen? You grow. Yeah, and so, that was we've kind of simplified it in that way. So we have groups, and I'll explain all of those. So in the church, there are all these different kinds of groups that are taking place. But here is really what I want to talk to you about tonight, is alongside of that group strategy and structure, we also have these tools. We call them the gospel tools that have shaped us individually and collectively as a church. These are the things that I would tell you, these are the things that our core group was really being shaped by as we planted the church 17 years ago, and over the first decade or more of the church was really being shaped by. Okay, these 4 gospel tools. You can go ahead and put them up, Joe, okay? And there are lots of ways to grow, lots of resources, but these are the things that are unique to our church. They are the way we do it here, okay? They are what make Redeemer. And to belong is to belong formatively, which means is to expect to be shaped by the institution you're a part of. We've always understood this until the last so many years of our culture. People belong to things expecting to be shaped by the things they belong to into a certain mold. Now we belong in order to shape the institutions into what we want them to be. And we want to get back to the other. I mean, so there's a mold. I've already told you what it is, right? And so you're at this church, most likely because you liked something about the church or the people of the church. I've had people come to me and say, I met people that went to your church at the ball field. I thought, wherever those people go to church, I got to go to church there too, because they're so great. I love them, right? And so if you're here because there's something about us you found compelling, or the people that you know, something about them that you found compelling, most likely it is these things that have made Redeemer the church that you like so much. And we are renewing our commitment to the things that have made Redeemer over this next year, because the church has grown so rapidly over the last few years. But the consequence of that is a smaller percentage of Redeemer today have been Redeemerized by their participation in these tools. So there's a smaller number of people in our church who've actually been shaped by the things that have shaped the church. Does that make sense? That is an existential threat to the church remaining to, being what it is set out to be, okay? And so we're renewing our commitment to these things, but I need to personally explain, because you may not even be aware of what they are. And by the way, that's what the next number of weeks are going to be. Is we're going to take, there are 4 of them. We only have 3 more weeks, and so we're going to take 3 of them and kind of give you an introduction to them week after week, so you get a little bit of a taste of them. But the first one is community Bible reading. Who has been a part of community Bible reading before, or a community Bible reading group? Who would explain? Richard, what is community Bible reading, and what is a community Bible reading group? You can, yeah. There you go. It's awesome. Yeah, and along with the schedule, there's also what do we call it? A journal. What does the journal ask you to do? Can anybody, can somebody else, do you know what, how? Tell us what the journal does. Mr. Big Shot Christian, tell us what the journal does. Yeah. That's great. That's great. Great, Richard. Good job. Why is it called community Bible reading? There you go, because it's designed to be done in community. And so there is a way of, so one of the things that we are wanting to do for everybody has ways to read the Bible. We would just ask you to consider, if you have a Bible reading plan, great. This is community Bible reading. This is a way of reading the Bible with everybody else, which we would just try to win you to, and to read it with a certain rubric, which we can train you in, give you a journal, have you set up to do that, because we believe that's an important part of the spiritual life, right? Like, you would be surprised how many people that come to church just don't have a regular habit of reading the Bible. And so we have a great, we didn't create it. A friend named Ted Sin. Yes, his last name is Sin. A man named Sin. Reverend Sin created. Isn't that great? And he had an associate pastor who was Indian at one time, and his last name was Sin also. Can you imagine your two pastors being Reverend Sin and Reverend Sin? You run from that church. Okay. I got these out of, no, keep it there, Joe, sorry. The next one is A Praying Life. Who's been a part of a Praying Life cohort, or you know what Praying Life is? Okay, who would be willing to stand up and just explain what a Praying Life is? We're going to have a whole time to do it, but 2-minute explanation of what a Praying Life is. Wait, I know how to pray. Anybody? Ashley? Sorry. She's my wife, so I get to put her in uncomfortable situations, I guess. And it's a system for learning to pray. And it uses prayer cards, right? So I know it's impossible to do in 2 minutes. But so it was a book that we've done a seminar before, but we've run cohorts where you basically take the book and spend about 8 weeks, and you're as a group, you're learning how to pray and how to use prayer cards to stay in the story and do all. Like Paul Miller's book is probably the best book on. Most people agree it's probably the best book on prayer out there practically, and so this is just a way of a few people spending 10 weeks working their way through the book, getting together strategies for how to learn how to do life through prayer, and it's an amazing resource. And so Bible study prayer, doesn't it make sense? Those two things will go together. Okay, but two more. Disciple by Grace is the third one. Who's been a part of a Disciple by Grace group? All right, somebody who would stand up and tell us about Disciple by Grace? Bueller. Bueller. I'm going to call on somebody. Raise your hand again so I can see who I want to call on. Thanks, Jamie. What's a Disciple by Grace group? It's by Paul Miller also. And now we've pirated it. Yep, that's right. Wait, block that out, Joe. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Or are they with the kids? Yeah. They're leaders. They're leaders. They're the leaders with the children. It's funny. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. No, you're fine. All you need to know about Disciple by Grace is a deep dive into the gospel. The very first thing you do is called the tongue assignment. And if your groups don't meet for 2 weeks, then for 2 weeks, you spend 2 weeks and you're not allowed to do three things. You're not allowed to defend yourself. For any reason, you're not allowed to be critical of anybody else. And you're not allowed to boast, right? And you're not allowed to boast. Try going 1 day without doing one of those things. And so we've had text threads where it's like we boasting is A, defending yourself is B, criticizing others C, and I've been in DBG groups where all day long it's just like B. If you do it, and then all day long it's like B, B, C, B. You're getting interrupted all day long. It's like you're confessing, I just boasted, because it's just really trying to take the gospel and bring it deeper into your heart. And then the last one is Person of Jesus study. So who's been impacted by Person of Jesus study, and would you just share what that is? Jenny, come on, Jenny. Look, you are eager. Let's go. What's the Person of Jesus study? Yeah. Interactive. Yeah. Participate. Great, thank you. All right, Joe, do you have our little QR code geared up? Here's one thing I would like for you to do. Could you guys take out your phones? I hate to ask you to do this, but could you take out your phone and pop this QR code if you can, and it'll take you to a survey that we want you to fill out. And we're asking on that survey, you'll see it's going to ask you which, if any, of these 4 gospel tools you have been actively participating in over the last year with a group of people as a part of being in this church. So have you been in a DBG? Have you been in a DBG group over the last 12 months? Have you done a Praying Life seminar? I don't think anybody can say that because I don't think we've had one in the last 12 months. So there's not been any cohorts. If you're in a community Bible reading group, like the Tuesday morning group, or if you're in an active text thread where you're going back and forth, not I had a text thread years ago and now every 2 months somebody pops something on there, but if it's like something you're actively doing. Right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yes, if you read community Bible reading by yourself, a lot of people do that. I'm saying with community Bible reading, are you actively doing it with anybody else? Like, are you engaging with other people in a way, or you've been trained in it, is what I'm looking for. The reason for this is because we have a goal this year of increasing the percentage of people. So if you would do that, then Joe can collect that data, and we'll get a sense of what percentage of you have been actively involved in these things. One of the things we're doing this year is to try to increase the percentage of adults in our church who are actively participating in one of these 4 things, which is why I'm asking you to do that, okay? Okay, Joe, go back to the tools if you can. So you see, you have the Bible and prayer, and then faith. DBG is about faith, the faith command, God's love for me in Christ. Person of Jesus study is learning how to love other people as Jesus did, the person of Jesus in me, loving. And so you have Bible reading, prayer, faith, and love. That's the Christian life. And it's the reason why we've honed in on these things. Now, let's put all this together. So they're groups and they're gospel tools. And together, those things really do make up the connect and the grow portions of our map. Remember, you show up, connect, grow. So the connect is kind of the group. Get in a group. The grow, our main strategy for growth are these gospel tools. And so all of the things that we do in church have both a learning and a connecting component to them. They have so they have a learning and a connecting piece or component, but different groups have different expectations, and they can accomplish different things best. And so a community group, so Joe, go to the next slide. No, go to the one after that. Yeah. Okay, go back. I'm sorry. Sorry. I don't have this in my notes. So if you see, here I tried to illustrate the difference we're trying to make this change here. Do you remember what I said then? Like, in the past, what we've done is we've said, we'd love for you to come to corporate worship, and we want every single person in our church to be part of a community group. And then if you're really spiritual and you can find your way into a Bible study or a discipleship group, then that would be really great. The change we're trying to make is we're trying to say now, obviously we want you to prioritize corporate worship, but then what we're wanting you to do is to really be discerning and thoughtful and get engaged in a group, but recognizing that there are all different kinds of groups for different kinds of seasons and needs and things that people are going through in their life. Does that make sense? And so go to the next slide, Joe. So if you think about, I said everything we do has a learning component and a connecting component. Does it make sense? Do you see the learning on the left there? And to the up is a high learning environment. Down is a lower learning environment. Connecting to the right is a higher connecting environment and a lower connecting environment to the left. So a community group typically, okay, not every group, but typically as we conceive of them and as we've experienced them, a community group is typically a high connection, but often a lower learning environment intentionally. So most of our community groups are either doing sermon discussion questions, or they're getting together and sharing and praying for one another, but it is kind of a low threshold on the actual content of what is happening in the group. Does that make sense? And it's because some people just need a place where there's not a lot of pressure, and they maybe they're going through a part of their life where I just need some place to come where somebody will just hear my story and pray for me, and I can just be connected. Everybody needs to be connected. Like, learning is not more important than connection, right? And so if it's a high connecting environment, then it's a spiritually good place for you to be. A Bible study group, women's Bible study, for example, or some other Bible study groups are typically higher learning environments, but often they are lower connecting because of the format. Not everybody's sharing. There's typically one teacher. The group is typically larger, so there's not as much life exposure that happens there. Now, I think in many cases, some of our women's Bible studies, tend to figure out how to do, because women are amazing at the connecting piece, and they tend to figure out how to actually do the connecting also in that. So in that way, they're doing both of those things. But we just want to recognize that a Bible study typically does that. What we're calling formation groups. Formation groups are these groups over there that are designed to be both a high connection and a high learning environment, where there's a pretty stringent learning piece, but it is also that curriculum is there not just for you to learn the curriculum, but to be the vehicle for the kind of life sharing that we hope happens in those groups as well. Does that make sense? Okay, so like you heard Jamie talk about Disciple by Grace. It's pretty intense as far as the curriculum goes. It's probably the most intense thing we do around here, but it also is pretty intense relationally, because you start talking about deep things. And if you get together and start talking about deep things, guess what happens? You grow deep together, right? And so okay, any thoughts about this? Does this make sense? Yeah? And so what we're trying to make sense of is so for us, the tools, CBR, I'm going to do the acronyms now, okay? You got to get these down if you're going to be around here. CBR, APL, A Praying Life, POJ, Person of Jesus Study, Disciple by Grace, DBG. Those really do form the curriculum for what we would call formation groups. So a CBR group is a formation group, okay? A Praying Life cohort, which we'll explain in the coming weeks, is a formation group, except it just has a limited time that you're only together for about 10 weeks. You're not together forever. A DBG group is a formation group because it's this curriculum, but actually one of the things we want to do is try to take that to your curriculum and try to condense it some, because it's just, we need to lessen the commitment there. In the Person of Jesus study, if you're in it with other people, although there's a lot more coming and going in that normally, it is designed to be a formation group. And so what we're hoping is that every group, and then we're really wanting to, as much as possible, there is a place for the low connection, low learning box too. But what we're hoping is that all of our groups are tending to move up and to the right as much as they can. But just recognizing community groups can only do so much. If you've led a community group, you understand that, right? I mean, they can just only do so much. And a Bible study can only do so much, and the formation groups can only do so much. But so this is probably gonna get me in trouble. I'm gonna have to stand up here and talk to people afterwards. But in some sense, I think part of what we're trying to aim at this year is that if we have less people so go back to the slide before this, Joe. So what we're saying is that for you to recognize if you are. What'd you say, Richard? The best Christians in the room? What'd you say? Is that what you said? If you are aiming for that, then maybe you would say, I'm going to be in church on Sunday, and I'm going to go to a community group, and I'm going to be in a formation group as well. And if you can do all that, man, good on you. And you might even say, I'm going to go to corporate worship, and I'm going to be in a community group on Sunday afternoon, and I'm going to come to women's Bible study on Thursday morning, and I'm going to be in a formation group. Wow. Okay. Do you know your neighbors? You know? Is the church your life? Then church is not something that's kind of pulling you in to send you back out. It's become a black hole that's just like, be careful of that is all I'm saying. You know? But what we would say is every one of us has to do some part of discernment of saying, what do I need right now? What do I need right now where I am today? Do I need to belong to something that's just low key, because I can't really commit to something because, I have Gator season tickets and I'm going to be gone 6 weekends out of the next 12 because they're going to be good this year, and I don't really want, whatever it is, or the hunting lease, that I have is going to take, maybe you just need something where there's not a high commitment and you're not going to, if that's okay. Maybe you need a community group, or maybe a Bible study is where you need to be. What we would say is there are all kinds of groups, and what we're wanting to do is we're trying to create the ability for as many people as possible to be and belong to one of these formation groups, a CBR group or a one anothering group, which Jonathan's going to talk about next week, or a Praying Life cohort, or a DBG group, or a POJ study. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Do y'all understand what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. The answer to that, Jonathan, how would you answer that question? Who's the contact person? Part of what we're doing is part of what we're wanting to spend the next 3 weeks doing this, and then we're going to try to figure out some way of providing an opportunity for you to sign up. But I think in women's ministry, Lauren, Richard could help with some of the men's stuff. Jonathan obviously could help. I could help. I mean, any of those people could help. And really, I think it'll be Ashley with community groups, obviously. I think it's probably, right now, there's not one single person. It would be just like a group. It's going to be a group effort on the part of our staff, I think. Is that fair? Somebody help me. How would y'all answer that? It might work. Yeah, it might work. We'll see. That's right. Yeah, and I think Jonathan's going to talk more about that next week, and there's some specific training I think he's even going to offer people who want to do that. And there'll be facilitators. We will do a Praying Life cohort out of Build this year, and there will be somebody who is the leader of that, and then you'll have an opportunity to say, I want to be in that. Or a person, the way we're going to try to do Person of Jesus study, instead of just offering it on a Wednesday at noon, if there are 10 of you that say, man, I've never done that, when Jenny talks about it, I think, man, I got to be a part of that. And you want to do it, if we can get 10 names, then what we're going to do is, instead of just create a time and say, I hope you can get there, I think what we're actually going to try to do is say, okay, if the 10 of you want to do this, when's the time that we can meet? What's that? Yeah, like treat it as like a discipleship group for the year. What's that? Who's the leader? The leaders will be, there will be people, in some cases, like with Person of Jesus study, it'll probably be a shared, like the people that are trained and have experience in it. With Praying Life, yeah, there is. There's a manual. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and I should say that. So our hope is not just that. So the best case scenario for every single one of these things is that take a Praying Life. Well, take Person of Jesus study. Let's do that. What I would love is for you to get excited about doing Person of Jesus study. So Jenny, you've done Person of Jesus study, right? Most of it, yeah. So if you've done it and been impacted by it and you've experienced it, the next thing I would want you to do is to say, okay, now I'm going to come to it, I'm going to do it, but I want to do it thinking about the fact that I'm going to teach it. So I did it with Tim Strawbridge and fell in love with it. And then the next year I went back and did it again, but I brought the manual with me. And as he taught, I just watched him teach through it and made notes and got ready to teach it. And then the third time I taught it. And guess when I learned the most? When I taught it. So in all of these things, what we get people saying is, I've done POJ, I don't want to do that again. What? Do it, and then do it to learn to teach it, and then teach it for the rest of your life. And I promise you, I've been doing it for 20 years. I learn something every single time I do it. Does that make sense? Right? See what I'm saying? And so we haven't figured out, you caught us on our elders went away for a retreat last week. Our staff met this Monday to kind of start to put these things together. It's now Wednesday, and so some of it is, in 3 weeks, we're going to have a great answer to your question. But we don't know yet. Yeah. Yeah. They all have booklets. Yes. That's right. Yep. 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 That is all in the works. I spent all my time. Can I say two things, or can I take four assumptions in everything that I've said, and then come back next week? Jonathan's going to talk about what community Bible reading is next week, and then I think Ashley's going to talk about a praying life the following week, and then I am going to do a Person of Jesus study, I think, on the last week and kind of introduce that. But here's what I would say. These assumptions behind our spiritual formation strategy. The first assumption is that the Gospels are a curriculum. Jesus says the doing of the Christian life is believing. So growing spiritually is growing in gospel faith and gospel love. The gospel is not the ABCs of Christianity. It's the A through Z. You don't graduate from the gospel. Okay? And so think about marriage, parenting, relationships, money, all these areas of your life. The work to grow in these things is the work of believing the gospel rightly. The gospel is the power of God. And so the goal is not to move on to deeper things. The gospel is the deeper things. The goal is to refuse to move on from the gospel, because that's what the Galatians did and got them in all kinds of trouble. So the default of the human heart is works righteousness, which is why you never stop talking about the gospel, which is why I get very nervous when people say to me, I've done that, I don't want to do it again. They'll say to me about Person of Jesus study, I've done that, I don't really want to do that again. You are going to be bored to death in heaven, because all we're going to do in heaven is gaze at the beauty of Jesus for 1,000,000,000, billion, trillion years, and at the end of it, you will still be finding things about him that absolutely fascinate you and put you on flat on the ground. You don't want to do it again? Ugh, who wants to talk about Jesus for an hour? Ugh. What's wrong with you? Sorry, that's kind of harsh. I get annoyed. Remember I said I get annoyed. But here's what's behind that, is there's this idea that growth means more. Growth means I've done that, I got to do something else. We would say growth is deeper. Growth is depth. The spiritual life is won or lost at the level of belief, not behavior. If that's true, then you have to go deep. You have to go beyond the behavior to the motivations and the desires of your heart. A lot of times in people's lives, it's not an effort problem. Paul said in Romans chapter 7, verse 15, he said, I don't understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want. I do the very things that I hate. For I desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. And so that's where you got to do battle in the spiritual life. And that's why you've got, often spiritual growth is a truth or a tool or something like that you just refuse to move away from until you go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And it's why this is so counterintuitive, and we get flack about it all the time. But we would just say, I believe that there is a lifetime worth of work for you to do in these four things that we're offering to you. I'm just going to stop there. Are there any questions? If you ask too many, I'm going to tell Tara it was your fault that we were late getting to the kids, so she can yell at you, not me. So I said our elders went away, and it's been really great. We started doing some strategic planning together, and last year, because there were so many new people, new friends coming to our church, the whole of last year we had a goal of helping 100 new people connect to a group in our church over the last 12 months. And we reached so in the last year, we were able to connect 75 new people to our church to a group that had not been a part of a group before that. And so all of last year was about assimilation and helping people connect, okay? This year, show up, connect, what comes next? Grow, go. This year, kind of our stated goal is, it says something like this. It is to go from X% of the adults in our church to about 40% of the adults at Redeemer that are engaging in a group in one of these four gospel tools. And so all of our energy is going into this. And so the ask is this: 3 more weeks of build. We're going to do a preview of three of these gospel tools. At the end, you will have a chance to express your desire to join a formation group, either a CBR group or a one anothering group, an APL cohort that will take 10 weeks the rest of the fall, and spend that doing that with one another, or a Person of Jesus study that will probably be the better part of the fall, and then the spring to Easter. getting together regularly just during Person of Jesus study. Our hope is that as you come and learn about these things, that you would say, yeah, that's what I need. I need that. I think I need to do that. Because guess what? Next semester, you'll have a chance to do something different. Or next year, or the year after, or whatever it might be. But within 7 years, let's say, I think that's, 5 to 7 years of being a part of our church, we are hoping that you would have an opportunity to be a part of every single one of these things. And within 10 years, we would hope that you could teach them all. Yeah. Or just desire. I would need, desire, just, man, I'm really excited about that. I'm curious about that. That sounds fun. My friends are all doing it. That's an okay thing. Because it's a relational piece too, right? Or if there's a group of you that you say, this is what we want to do. We want to do this year. But we'll work out the logistics later. Anything else that you want to say? Yes. Nope. We're not, it's not linear. Yeah, it's not linear. No. I mean, I say that, but then we would say, but there's a sense in which we would say it does feel like getting a habit of reading the Bible, Like if you really don't have a habit of reading the Bible and a good procedure for that, I would probably encourage you start there. That's the only caveat that I would give to that. But other than that, I would say what do you want to say something? Ashley's like this.
Part of that is not just the Bible reading. If you don't have a habit of reading the Bible in community.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's a better way of saying that. Yeah.
Because the tool helps us talk about the real state of our heart.
Right.
And learn to confess.
So it's not just about reading the Bible. It's about how the tool is helping us connect and engage with one another, about what's going on in our hearts, to talk not just about talk about the deep things of things that are going on with us. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, and nobody get in a hurry, because guess what? In 5 years, we're going to be doing this, right? So there's no reason to be in a hurry. All right, that's good. That's helpful, I hope. I was very excited about tonight, so thank you. This is a lot of fun for me. And so I hope you come back next week and the week after as we start to do these things together. I think you'll get a sense, and we'll talk more about the kind of the mechanics of it as we go along. But can I pray for us before we go tonight? So, Father, thank you for these new friends and for their attentiveness and their willingness to listen and be curious about these things. Would you help us to order this well and put structure to it? And would you put in our hearts eagerness and a desire to pursue these things? To know you better, to love you better, to love one another, to love our world. Lord Jesus, you are worthy of our time and our attention to these things. So we do ask it for your sake, and we ask these things in your name. Amen. Thank you all.